With the elections just around the corner, I was wondering what the various candidates standing in the Wairarapa are thinking. Time to put some questions to them. Yes, no answers. Here we go. Okay, number one, do you support lowering the voting age to 16?
I do.
Is that a yes or a no?
I failed at the first question. Yes.
Do you support more solar and wind farms in the region?
Yes, as long as it's in the right place.
Do you see a connection between extreme weather events and climate change?
Absolutely, yes.
Do you support a ute tax to help meet climate commitments?
Well, yes.
Would you consider a wealth tax?
No.
Do you support keeping New Zealand GM free?
In certain circumstances, yes.
What will you do about the lack of medical professionals in the area?
We actually visited Wairarapa Hospital yesterday with the Health Minister, nzherald, and what I was really pleased to hear was that there have been 3,000 registrations for nurses in the last 3 months. So the work that we're doing to attract people from overseas, but also train New Zealanders into the medical field and streamline the visa processes so that they've got a pathway to residency straight away, it's clearly working. We know every country in the world has a shortage of medical professionals as a result of COVID, and it's on the government to change the settings to fill that gap, and so that's a pretty phenomenal result so far. Long may it continue.
What is your attitude towards co-governance and democracy?
There's a lot of misinformation out there that says that there's some sort of agenda, that there's going to be 50-50 representation in local government and central government, that there might even be separate Māori parliament and all this sort of stuff, yet none of that is on the government's agenda. They've never proposed it, never promoted it, but that's what they're saying. And a lot of people are worried about that, and I don't blame them, because if that was the policy, I wouldn't support it. It's been put forward that co-governance isn't equal to one person, one vote. How do you deal with that viewpoint? Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because some of those people that say it's not one person, one vote, therefore it's wrong, also are seemingly comfortable with the rule in New Zealand that if you own more than one property, then you get more than one vote in local body elections. So if you own a house here in Masterton, but a batch in the Tararua district, you get a vote on both councils. That's more than one person, one vote, and that's voting on the basis of property rights, which most people think we got rid of decades ago, but we don't. But no one's kicking up a stink about that. We also don't have a vote in who our head of state is. That's not one person, one vote. And yet no one seems to be kicking up a stink about that. So again, I think that this is just people trying to politicise this. We're in election year. They're trying to make as much hay as they possibly can. But actually, at the end of the day, we still have firm democratic principles in this country which we should all try and defend at every opportunity, whilst also recognising that democracy is in different forms in every democratic country. What policies are you planning to address climate change? We need to have a plan around resilience, around proper funding for infrastructure so that it can withhold this severe weather. We saw with Gabrielle. In order to plan for this, we've got to be honest. And what dismays me is that we have political parties saying, oh yes, we agree with net zero by 2050, but aren't doing a thing to achieve it, and saying that we don't need to act, or saying that we can build resilient roads while also not planning on how they're going to pay for it. I think that's dishonest. And so there's residential areas that have been classified that are no longer suitable to be lived in. The local government sector has been supported by central government. We are going to assist them to buy those houses out and help those people whose lives have been turned upside down to rebuild their life elsewhere, but also putting in funding so that if it happens again, or when it happens again, hopefully the bridges don't fall out or the rail network doesn't collapse. What are your transport plans for the Wairarapa? Well, I think people can see that what I promise I back up and deliver. So I've been an MP for 6 years. I said that we would fund the replacement Manawatu Gorge. We did. That's on track. It's the largest earthworks project in the country. It's on track and it's on budget. I campaigned for an upgrade of the Wairarapa rail line. We got money for that. I said that I would work really hard to get new trains. We've got that. And I campaigned for the roundabouts at the Norfolk Road and Namatawa Road intersections, and we got that. Will you instruct NZTA to reinstate the 100 kilometre
Featherston to Masterton speed limits?
I have to say it's been a source of immense frustration for me because I haven't agreed with the speed changes. Obviously, I just mentioned that I campaigned really hard to get the funding for the roundabouts, and that was a great day. And then all the other stuff came about, which I didn't ask for on behalf of the community, and I don't believe many people did, and yet it was put in place. The consultation process from Waka Kotahi was appalling. They had a very clear view from the community. There were numerous letters from me, many meetings, made it very clear that that stretch south of Carterton to Featherston should remain 100 k's, and they went ahead and did it anyway. I've put in yet another formal request, this must be about the 9th, to the Minister to ask Waka Kotahi to review the decision. He's done that, but they don't have to do it.
How do you plan to deal with financial inequality within society?
Well, I think if people look at what this government has done to address what was a widening gap between those that have and those that don't, and those that don't was growing too, they'll see that there's been a concerted effort to address that. Things like school lunches, for example, that's made a massive difference. A relatively small investment from government has meant that kids are going to school regularly, because what we saw previously is that parents were keeping them away because they were so ashamed that they couldn't provide lunch and they didn't want that known at school, and a number of other reasons. But because the school lunch program is in at our most lowest decile schools, the attendance rate is growing up, and they are learning better because they're being fed at school. Things like the winter energy payment, that has meant that those that are retired or those that are on a benefit can actually keep their homes warm during winter. That's made a massive difference. It's meant that fewer people are going to hospital in winter because their house is warm and not damp and unhealthy. Things like the free prescription charges is having the same effect. There's been a number of things that we've done that has gone to address the wealth inequality, but I think the most effective thing has been the focus on raising wages.
How do we reconcile the fact that people are really struggling where, huge multinational corporations within New Zealand are really raking it in?
A really fair concern, and it's one that we have recognised. So there's an inquiry into the banks that's underway. There's also an inquiry into the supermarkets as well. We've established a grocery commissioner, which will be keeping an eye on things, and we've passed laws that will mean that supermarkets can no longer hold covenants on blocks of land to prevent competitors coming in, and they also have to open up their wholesale elements of their business to competitors as well. And I think that's actually quite significant. So there are supermarket chains that are known for bringing down prices that are operating in other countries that would operate in New Zealand if it was a level playing field. We've just levelled that playing field, so I expect that we'll see more competition entering the country, which is really good news.
What actions will you be taking to limit crime?
So I think one of the things that this government should be most proud of is increasing the number of police by 1,800. That's above and beyond attrition as well. So the number of police that have been recruited over the last 6 years is well beyond that. So the ratio between a police officer, frontline police officer, and the general public has reduced from 520 to 480. So here locally in Wairarapa, we've got a dedicated organised crime unit now, which we never had. We've re-established a dedicated rural team, which was taken back in the previous government. That is the best thing you can do. In addition, giving police more powers. So they are clamping down on organised crime now. Those that are in gangs are losing assets left, right and centre because of changes that we've made, but also police have the ability to intervene much earlier than they did previously. That's the reaction to crime, and that's a good thing, but we mustn't also lose focus on preventing crime in the first place. And we know that the biggest driver of crime is poverty. And so to your previous question around what are we doing around wealth inequality, continuing to reduce child poverty in this country, if we don't do that, it will have flow-on effects with crime later on. You may well have heard it from the other candidates talk about breaking the cycle. If we want to break the cycle, then that requires investment, and it requires pretty intimate and detailed interventions. That's what we've got in place now. But you're not going to see the changes overnight. You're going to see them down the line, because those youth that are offending now, that didn't happen overnight. That's flow and effect from decisions that were made a long time ago. We've got to front up to that.